Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm Liz Heiman, and each week I'm joined by your crew of seasoned sales experts who have navigated these waters and come out victorious. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Heiman, your host, and I'm here with your Sales SOS podcast crew. I don't know if I say this often enough, but we have an amazing crew of brilliant thought leaders that are here just to answer your questions. And so today we're going to be talking about methodology. And I think that the first question, like we talk about this sales methodology. Like, oh, what sales methodology do you use? Or, how do I build sales methodology into my CRM? Like, people are talking about this, but I don't know if people really understand. What is sales methodology? Let's just start there. I don't know who wants to dig in. Brynne, did you want to start?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in because I think at a high level, sales methodology is really a structured framework or approach that's guiding sales reps or anyone in sales. It doesn't really even have to be a rep, right? Anyone. But the methodology is what's my guiding light? What are the steps throughout the sales process that I'm going to take? It's really how you sell. It's the philosophy behind how you sell. And it's the goal is that methodology is uncovering needs, it's building trust, it's bridging solutions in a scalable, repeatable way, right? So like at a high level, it's prospecting, discovery, proposal, overcoming objections, close at a high level. But then we get into specific methodologies like Miller Heiman and Spin and Sandler and Challenger, right? And we have one that's called Chirp. BANT is the old-fashioned sales methodology that should be buried, but besides the point. But that's like at a high level. It's like, what is that step-by-step philosophy that's ingrained into process that is scalable and repeatable?
I think one thing to add to that, Brynne, is it gives you a common language to use internally when you're talking about deals, opportunities, process. Everybody now has a clean, clear understanding of exactly what you mean when you say, we're in this stage, we're doing this. And it helps cut down some of the potential confusion, because I've been in organizations where you have the same words for multiple different pieces of a process. And it's not a great place to be if people are reading different definitions of what that role is or what that person's supposed to be doing or what that step is. So having a consistent way to communicate helps cut through a lot of the noise.
I'll add on to both of you by saying, Chris, you just presented why that consistency matters on the inside, but as usual, I'll just represent the customer here and say why that consistency matters a lot there. You may have account people you may rearrange account territories, right? You may have people leave and come on. You may have a customer who was a new prospect who was a customer at another account who dealt with a different salesperson. So not coming across as schizophrenic, right? And how everybody has their own cowboy way of doing things, and having some sort of consistency is important for your brand, for customers to understand what to expect too.
Love that.
Mike, will you add any additional thoughts on what is it?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges that comes up, and it's come up a couple of times as we've been talking, is definition. So like, what's the difference between a system, a method, a process?
Mm-hmm.
Often these words get used combined, or interchanged with each other. And we'll talk about things like BANT as a method or a methodology. And really it's a qualification framework. So like that's the focus of something like that, or MEDIC or MEDPIC or whatever other letter they want to add into it these days. They just keep adding these different pieces, and it's a qualification method or a qualification framework. It's not a process. Process means that something has to happen in a series, in an order of events. And we've talked about that in the past in some of our other stuff. Method, to Brynne's point, it's kind of, and the other points that were made up or discussed here, it's a how we do. It's like a culture almost. It's like how we do what we do. It's our state of being. It's how we operate. One of the most common methods that people are familiar with, or you could do a search for, if you go back into chemistry class way back when, is the scientific method, right? So you can apply the scientific method to testing something, having a hypothesis, going out and testing that hypothesis, taking your data and trying to either disprove a hypothesis, because depending on where you sit, you can never really prove anything. So that's how I think about this stuff. Methods, systems, processes, tools are all different things, but they get combined together. And the people who don't know how to design them or don't know how to pull them together or build them end up falling into the trap of thought leaders who are like, this is the one true like ring to rule them all, which is what the medic chants people are all doing today. And I laugh at them. Like anyway. So those are my like 2.5 cents.
So let me just kind of pull together some different things that were said. Common language, right? A common way of doing something, a way of following a series of steps that we can do repeatedly, right? And we can understand what kind of result we're going to get if we follow that process. It's a philosophy. A lot of methodologies have a philosophy behind them. And then it is also something that is manageable, right? So it's repeatable, it's manageable, it's a common language, it improves communication. So if you're talking about implementing methodology, if you're talking about we need methodology or we have methodology, one of the measures of whether it's working or how to make it work is to say, are we all speaking the same language? Are we all following the same process? When we talk about it, do we understand each other? Do we have certain guide rails that keep us on track? Can we manage it? Is it actually manageable? And I will tell you, when I started my career, and I know I told you guys the story before, but this is really why I learned how important methodology is. I was 30 years old and I had a sales organization of international independent consultants, contractors who had been selling longer than I had been alive. And there was no way I was managing them. There was nothing this snot-nosed kid was going to tell them that they didn't already know. And so I learned really early on, I couldn't manage them, but I could manage a process. We all agreed to a process and we all followed the process. And so when I had conversations with them, around the funnel, conversations with them around the process and the buying influences and all of the things that we taught and agreed to. And I was able to manage that team successfully and take them from a negative $200,000 in a year to $1 million in a year. And so, when you have that and you're really all, doing it together, talking the same language, managing in the same way, then you have something to work with. When you don't, you have chaos, which is, of course, my favorite. Oops, I just got muted, which is my favorite word when it comes to sales, right? Because most of it is just chaos. So that's the basis of what a methodology is. So then let's talk about, why do you need one? Like, aside from that, like, how do you pick one? What do they do exactly? And I think there's different ones we all talk about. So maybe we can talk about different roles they play.
I think the first thing you have to determine is, what does a typical sales cycle look like before you pick? Like Miller Heiman, I think, is the greatest process for a complex sale. But if you're selling a $197 widget, Miller Heiman is the wrong process, right?
Overkill.
Right. And that's where you go to maybe Sandler. Probably never. But whatever. But
no, Brynne, if you diss Sandler, they're never going to sponsor us.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Well, can I I know that I just have to state this. I was Sandlerized, and it was so uncomfortable where the upfront contract, I just want to say, and you guys out there that are doing it, it's working for you, great, enjoy. But I felt like a victim of this. And this upfront contract was literally, okay, so we're setting disappointment. Is there any reason you're not going to attend? And I'm like, hey, girl, I'm setting this appointment. If you really believe that you have to double and triple clarify so I don't stand you up, you've got to give me value and a reason to show up, not a threat. So I just want to share that. Okay. And just closes me down. So yeah, go ahead.
But Brynne, if we don't have a mutual action plan, how do we know that we're aligned on what we're going to do together?
I don't even know what we're going to do when you have me at all these little commitments and I don't even know what you do yet. I don't even know the value you're going to bring yet. I have no idea. I mean, it's like, so, and I'm going to share one of the reasons I moved I have this methodology from BANT to CHIRP. And BANT is budget authority, needs and timing. That's all as a seller. What I want to get out of it. What do I need? And the buyer isn't in that at all. What they need and want.
Now, Adira loves to talk about being banted, right? He hates being banted.
It's awful. It's awful. And that's all this, it's a transactional mindset, and it's about me making the sale, not about you getting a problem solved. So let's just
I look at it. I agree with you, by the way. So before I say this, but there are pieces of BANT that are semi-okay, right? But I tend to look at some of it doesn't matter. Like if you solve a real problem, budget will be found. So what do you care if there's budget for this today? Do you solve a real problem for that business? If you do, and they recognize that problem and it's above the line, they'll find money for it. Authority can matter, but it depends on the organization. Need is probably the part of it that actually does matter. And then timing, I always look at, and I said this till I'm blue in the face so many times, there's nothing you can do from a timing perspective. Customers buy on their own timeline for their own reasons. All you can do is say, if you need to get this done by December 31st, then this is when you have to get started. I can highlight what they have to do in order to get there, but I'm not going to change their timing because I'm going to offer a discount or whatever it happens to be. Their timing's their timing.
So I agree with that. And timing really comes down to priority.
Yep.
Right. And so that's where, I mean, I'm just going to throw out the CHIRP, which is something new that I just love, which is, what is the challenge? What is the history with that challenge inside of the company? What have they done before? What hasn't worked? Why is it still a challenge? What risk is there if they don't fix this challenge? What impact is on that person if they don't fix this challenge? And is this even a priority? So I think when you move in, now it's about them instead of what's the impact for them? Then eventually we'll get into BANT right after we've identified what matters to them. And so anyway, I think having so the question initially that was put out there was methodology, right? Why have a methodology? And the reason you have a methodology is to take you through all the things that they need and we need to determine if there's an opportunity here. And then once we've determined there's an opportunity here, what are the processes to get it to execution? So that's why we need a methodology, but we have to make sure that the methodology aligns to, is it a complex sale? Is it a simple sale? Is it a one close sale? Is it a 17-person decision? How long is the sales cycle? And then you can determine what methodology is right for you. Okay, I'm done. That's my rant on BANT.
So let me jump in for a second, because what I want to talk about for a minute is that different methodologies solve different problems. And there are some methodologies, like if you go to an entire philosophy, you might have different pieces that cover different parts. But when we start talking about philosophy, when we start talking about methodologies, we start thinking about, well, this one really helps with the qualifying process. So like BANT is a qualifying criteria. And I always say it's BANF because you have to have the F in there because they may have a need, but if it's not a fit, you got nothing. But so that's a qualifying. MEDIC really started just as qualifying. They've added some other pieces, but it solves a qualifying problem, right? Others are more tactical. How do I interact with my client? How do I have conversations with them? That would be more like a spin or a challenger. But then there's others that are more strategic, and like Challenger has a strategic component. Miller Heiman is famous for the strategic selling component. So when we start thinking about methodology, we need to figure out what problem we need to solve and what methodology or sets of methodologies are going to work for us. So if we go to Miller Heiman, if we did that, and I've got to do this just because this is what I'm most familiar with, it's all about strategy, but one is a meeting strategy, one is an opportunity or a deal strategy, and one is a large account strategy. Those are all strategies that incorporate within them philosophy, questioning, right? So there's a bunch of stuff built into them. So that is one of the more complete methodologies, but it doesn't have a clear qualifying process in it, right? There's nothing in Miller Heiman that tells you exactly how to qualify. So, right, each of them solves different problems. And if you're having a problem, you need to start thinking about what exactly is the problem you're trying to solve. And I'm going to pass it back over. It looked like Chris and Mike both have things to share.
If
All right,
they're not ready, I have one thing I want to add to what you said, Liz. I agree that you have to think about what problems you're trying to solve for to know what methodology works for you, because they each do different things. But even a step before that, I think what Brynne said about how she felt about different methodologies when she was forced into them, right? You need to make sure it fits your culture. It fits your values of your organization, right? So I think that's like step one. Does this fit our values? Does this fit our culture? Step two, what are the problems we're trying to solve? And you have to think pretty universally, because your problems today may not be your problems in 90 days, much less a year or 3 years, right? And this is something that you're selling a system, you're selling a methodology that's like, it's deeper than like a task process, right? You're trying to get people to build a belief in something. Well, this works. This is the right way to do something. So it's more permanent than these are the steps we're gonna do, the workflow steps we're gonna do, right? So I think those pieces are really important. And then step three, I think you guys would have a better word for this, but I would say, however, how much you need to scale and standardize is like the next step of that. If you know you're going to be hiring and growing over a period of time, you're scaling in some form, then I think it's really important to think about a methodology that grows with you, right? If you know that you're mostly dealing with a set amount and, low turnover, then you have a different criteria to work with. So to me, when you're really faced with which one of these do I do, I really feel like our team needs something. Those are like the first 3 steps I would consider.
Yeah, I think Renee, on top of that, I would sit there and say, depending on what type of market that you're trying to approach. So if you were like a SaaS company who's segmented from commercial to mid to enterprise, and you're trying to use the same methodology for all of those, you're going to do it wrong, because they're different. They're different sales cycles. They're different processes, and the buyers are different. And so if you don't understand that interplay between your process, how your customers buy, and how that overlays, you're probably going to end up making a lot of mistakes in how you execute and how your team executes, which is going to lead to a lot of frustration, probably a fair amount of turnover. And that's going to create a fairly negative cycle, I think, within your business.
Very good addition. Look at you thinking of the customer point of view. We just did role reversal.
Mike, you were having.
It's like I haven't been doing this for over a year with you.
We could speak
There's
for
a-
each other.
There's a quote out there, and I had to look it up so I got it right, but it's methods are many, principles are few. So there are a lot of methods out there. In the absence of having a method inside your organization that you're following, build one or find one based on the specific problem that you're looking to solve at the point in time, not next year's problem or 10 years down the road. And that because over time, your methods are going to shift and change depending on what you see happen inside the market. One of the challenges that I think we've all seen happen is when a high performing sales rep gets promoted into a sales leadership role. And then you find out that person, although they had their own internal process that they followed or internal method that they followed, doesn't necessarily translate over to each of the other people that are inside the business. And then sometimes you lose people inside the business, or you try to hire to fit that method. So if you're thinking about this, here's the order of operations that I would suggest. Number one, if you don't have a method, start thinking about this, like was being told or discussed, the specific problem that you're looking to solve in the short term, and apply a method to help solve for that. When you do have methods in place, then start to study those methods, which gets into this methodology thing, the study of methods, and start to figure out, what do you want to change? What do you want to do different? How do you want to shift things? Methods give you the flexibility for a team to operate like themselves inside a system. They're not as prescriptive as process. These things have to happen in this specific order. And when you stop or something falls back, you've got to you go backward and then you repeat and go in that same order. That's why you get predictability in process. There's no predictability or there's less predictability in method, from my perspective. But that's what I would add there. There's a lot of different methods out there, and you will not have any shortage of new ones that you can apply. But if you're changing your methods every other week, you're in trouble.
I will say that's one of the things that we used to talk about a lot back in my Miller Heiman days, which was the companies that had the flavor of the month. We're going to do a new sales training this year. Which one shall we do? Okay, let's do a different one next year. Which one shall we do? And so the salespeople pick up a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and maybe it makes them better sellers. But the ones that we watched be super successful were companies like Coca-Cola and Hewlett Packard and a handful of others, many others, that actually built it into their culture. Every single sales rep that ever joined the company went through those programs. The leaders were taught to manage around. The language was built into not just what the tools that the salespeople use, but what marketing and everybody else used. And so I think it's important when you're thinking about methodology, are you doing training or are you implementing a methodology across your organization going to have long-term impact? And if you just need a training, then go get a training. That's fine. But understand that's different than implementing a methodology or even a philosophy. Okay. Any last thoughts on this? In our next episode, we're going to talk about, what should you expect from your sales team? Like, how do you actually get a sales team doing this? What should they be doing? How should the managers get involved? Do we have anything we want to talk about before we jump into that next episode?
So the only thing is I just put in a prompt that people can throw into their favorite LLM that should if you don't know where to start, put that in and it's going to interview you and it might help. It's completely agnostic and it's all based on the research that the LLM will do once you answer those questions. So, and it'll compare opportunities for you. So I'll walk through it. So I want to evaluate and select a sales methodology that aligns with my team's selling style, cycle, deal complexity, and buyer behavior. The goal is to improve consistency, coaching, qualification, and win rates without making the process feel robotic or rigid. Your role, meaning the AI's role, is to act as a thought partner, asking me smart questions, surfacing trade-offs, and ultimately guiding me toward a methodology or blend that fits our real world sales motion. I want to identify a sales methodology or combination of approaches that fits our team's strengths, supports consultative selling. You don't need to do that if you don't want that to be, and drives better outcomes and overcomplicating the process. A short list sales methodologies that could align with my sales team, and a side-by-side comparison chart, including ideal use cases, sales cycle length, number of decision makers, and type of rep it suits best, a simple diagnostic to help me evaluate fit, and optional recommendations for hybrid approaches or when to break the rule. Don't assume one size fits all. Don't default to legacy models just because they're popular. Ask me one question at a time to help me tailor this to my team.
So I just want to say to everybody, that was a lot, but I'm guessing that if you find, hopefully you have connected with all of us on LinkedIn. If you have not, please connect with all of us, but send Brynne a note that just says, hey, will you send me that prompt for picking a sales methodology? And I bet you she will do that.
I will.
All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode, everybody.
And that's a wrap for this episode of the Sales SOS Podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope that episode has equipped you to navigate sales leadership with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to your Sales SOS Podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on LinkedIn or YouTube. Until next time, keep sailing toward your sales goals.